As the prince grew older, his kindness made him well loved by everyone who knew him. But his father was worried. Siddhattha is too gentle and sensitive, he thought. I want him to grow up to be a great king, and kings must be strong and powerful. But the prince is more interested in sitting by himself in the garden than he is in learning how to be the ruler of a kingdom. I am afraid that my son will soon want to leave the palace and follow the lonely life of holy men like Siddhattha. If he does this, he will never become a great king. These thoughts bothered the king very much. He sent for his most trusted ministers and asked them what he could do. Finally, one of them suggested, "O king, your son sits and dreams of other worlds only because he is not yet attached to anything in this world. Find him a wife. Let him get married and have children, and soon he will stop dreaming and become interested in learning how to rule the kingdom." The king thought this was an excellent idea, so he arranged for a large banquet at the palace. All the young women from noble families were invited. At the end of the evening, the prince was asked to give presents to each of the guests, while several ministers watched him closely to see which of the young women the prince seemed to like. The women who were scarcely more than young girls were all very embarrassed to appear before the prince. He looked so handsome, but so distant as he stood in front of the table bearing all the expensive gifts. One by one they shyly went up to him, timidly looking downwards as they approached. They silently accept the jewel or bracelet or other gifts and quickly return to their place. Finally, only one young woman was left. She was Yashodhara, the daughter of a neighboring king. Unlike the others, she approached the prince without any shyness. For the first time that evening, the young prince looked directly at the woman before him. She was very beautiful, and the prince was immediately attracted to her. They stood in silence for a while, looking into each other's eyes. Then Yashodhara spoke. "Oh, prince, where is the gift for me?" The prince was startled, as if awakening from a dream. He looked down at the table and saw it was empty. All the gifts had already been given out to the other guests. "Here, take this," said the prince, removing his own ring from his finger. "This is for you." Yashodhara gracefully accepted the ring and walked slowly back to her place. The ministers saw all that happened and excitedly ran to the king. "Sir," they reported happily, "we have found the perfect bride for the prince. She is Princess Yashodhara, daughter of your neighbor King Suprabhuta. Let us immediately go to this king and arrange for the marriage of his daughter and your son." King Siddhattha agreed, and soon afterwards visited Yashodhara's Vahaza, Yashothara's father. King Supaputa greeted him warmly and said, "I am sure that your son is a fine young man, but I cannot give my daughter away to just anyone. Many other princes want to marry her, and they are all excellent young men. They are skilled in riding, archery, and other royal sports. Therefore, if your son wants to marry my daughter, he will have to compete in a contest with the other suitors, as is our customs." And so it was arranged for a great contest to be held with beautiful Yashothara as the prize. King Siddhattha was worried. He thought, "My son has never showed the slightest interest in warriors' games. How can he ever win this contest?" But the prince understood his father's fears and said to him, "Do not be worried. I am prepared to do whatever is necessary to win Yashothara as my bride." The first event was archery. The other men placed their targets a long distance away, yet each was able to hit the bullseye. And when it was Siddhattha's turn, for Siddhattha's cousin was also one of the suitors, he not only hit the bullseyes, but sent his arrow right through the targets until it stuck out the other side. Crowd cheered, but Yashothara covered her eyes in fright. "How can my beloved Siddhattha ever beat that shot?" she thought. "How dreadful if I had to marry Siddhattha." But the prince was confident. When it was his turn, he had the targets placed so far away that most of the people could hardly even see it. Then he took an arrow from his quiver and pulled back on his bow. The prince was so strong, however, that the bow burst in half. He had drawn it back so far. "Please fetch me another bow," the prince asked, "but a much stronger one this time, so it will not break like the other one." Then a minister called out, "Oh, Prince, there is a very old bow in the palace. It belongs to one of the greatest warriors of the past. But since he died many years ago, no one has been strong enough to string it, much less shoot it." "I shall use that one," said the prince, and everyone was amazed. When he was handed the bow, he carefully bent it and strung it easily. Then he notched an arrow on the string, drew it back so far that the ends of the bow almost touched, aimed and let the arrow fly. Twang! The bow made such a loud sound that people in faraway villages heard it. The arrow shot away so fast that when it hit the distant targets right in the center of the bullseye, it did not even slow down, but continued to fly until it was out of sight. The crowd roared in delight. "The prince has won! The prince has won!" But archery was only the first event of the day. The next contest was in swordsmanship. Each young man selected a tree and showed it his strength by slashing through it with his sword. One suitor cut through a tree 6 inches thick, another 9 inches, and a third cut through a tree a foot thick. with a single stroke of his sword. Then it was the prince's turn. He selected a tree that had 2 trunks, grown side by side. He swung his sword so quickly that it cut through the tree faster than anyone could see. His sword was so sharp and his cuts so even that the tree did not even fall over. Instead, it remained standing, perfectly balanced. When they saw the tree still standing upright, the crowd and especially Yashodhara moaned, "He has failed." The prince's sword did not even cut into the first trunk, but just then a breeze stirred up and blew over the neatly severed tree trunks. The crowd's moans turned into cheers, and again they shouted, "The prince has won!" The final contest was in horsemanship. A wild horse, which had never been ridden before, was held down by several strong men while each young suitor tried to mount it. But the horse bucked and kicked so furious that none of them could stay on its back for more than a few seconds. Finally, one young man managed to hold on, and the attendants let go of the horse, but it jumped and lunged about with such fury and anger that the rider was thrown to the ground, and he would have been trampled if the men had not rushed out and pulled him to safety. The crowd began screaming loudly, "Stop the contest! Don't let the prince near that horse. It is too dangerous. The horse will kill him." But Siddhattha had no fear. Gentleness can be more powerful than brute strength, he thought, and slowly reached out and took hold of a small tuft of hair that grew from the horse's forehead. Speaking in a low and pleasant voice and gently stroking the wild horse head and sighed, he calmed its anger, rage and fear. Soon the horse was so gentle that it began licking Siddhattha's hand. Then, still whispering sweetly to the horse, the prince climbed onto its back. While the crowd roared happily, he paraded the steed in front of the kings and ministers and bowed low to his fair prize, the lovely Yashodhara. The contest was over. Young Siddhattha had won, and he had done so not only by his great skills and strength, but by his gentle and kindness as well.